All systems are a go.
Awesome.
How's it going, Madison?
We're doing good, you know? We are doing good. I almost forgot what it's called. Solar Eclipse.
It's currently
It's
happening.
currently happening at this moment, which is just in time for this episode.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Solar eclipses and Saturn returns and things that we learned about astrology over the last few days of extensive research. I'm just kidding. It was like maybe an hour.
I was going to say,
yeah. It's like,
maybe for you. I know that I definitely did
no,
not
dude,
do.
I didn't look it up all that much.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the stuff says the same things and we're going to go our own direction anyway with it. So I just figured we just need the gist and then we get on with it.
Yeah. And I think that we're also open to the idea of all this stuff, but we're not at all versed in it.
Yes. And I also don't want to like pretend like I could teach someone about this in full depth. Like
no,
there's
I
just
could
no
scratch
way.
the surface and tell you what I've
Barely scratched the surface.
No, I could
Like,
scratch it enough to show you what I personally have read. And that's as far as we're going to go.
Dude, yeah. I mean, like I've mentioned, my comprehension is like, it's getting better, but
I was going to say, it's doing great.
it's okay.
Okay.
That's why I have to take notes. Like I know myself well enough now that I have to take notes while I'm reading or else I don't remember like 85% of it.
Same.
Yeah.
It's just busy. I call it busy brain. Like there's just a lot of information packed in
Yes.
to not huge square footage, you know?
Yeah.
Like how
That's
does it all
true.
fit? I don't know. It's still mind boggling. But so you read something about.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I was telling Tess before we were recording is that I read something. Also, like, side note is that this shirt, like, I feel like a T-Rex because I have to like keep my arms like
a straight
confined. Yeah. Because if I put my arm up there, like the shit's going up to my chin.
It's sexy. Like it's
Okay,
a good
thank
look.
you.
I think it would be
I just have to be like
it'd be
really
better
proper.
suited if you were like going out to grab a cocktail and all you needed to do was like
Use my T-Rex
Yes.
arm to go in. Yeah.
but like that's not a dance, that's never gonna hit the dance floor.
Oh no, absolutely not. Like if anything, it might be good because I could use it as an excuse to not go out dancing.
Okay, whatever.
Anyway, okay. So I was telling Tess before we recorded that obviously the solar eclipse is happening as we speak because we're recording this on Monday, April 8th, right? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to talk about what it is, like what it means, like its significance. And so this is just like one interpretation that I found, which is funny because Tess was earlier was talking to her boss and like she had a full other interpretation of what this is. So according to this Instagram account, which sounds like really reputable.
I was gonna say always a credible source.
Yeah. Okay. So it's eclipse season. Okay, we just sound like really like noobs right now, but we are. I don't know about this.
We're noobs.
Yes, we're novices. That's better. That's a better word.
Yeah, I like novice better. Also, doesn't that bring up like dirt bike? Remember
Novice?
Like a novice trail. I remember like seeing the trail signs
Maybe.
and like that's for novice riders, and that was the nicer way.
Dude, that's
of
a
saying
really good definition for whoever was like. I'm surprised the dirt bike community used that word.
We're not stupid.
No, I know, but like we're not as refined, I would
Maybe.
say.
Okay.
Okay.
Fair enough. Okay.
So eclipse season is when the past and present blur, converge, and can potentially separate. New timelines can be created. The end is the beginning. Okay, a little cryptic, but
Okay.
I'll continue on. A solar eclipse is when the moon, our subconscious, memories, intuition, the past, covers the sun. The present, our consciousness, our sight.
Okay, so like how I'm interpreting it is like our past shit is clouding like our current knowing or
So, yes. In a
No?
way. Okay. So the moon represents our subconscious, memories, intuition, the past. And it covers the sun, which is the present, our consciousness, and our sight.
Okay.
Right? So that's
Yes.
what you just said.
I think so.
Okay. We'll have to go back and see. It's when our subconscious services and when our shadows speak the loudest. Shame, fear, our demons come up to be integrated. Okay. We receive messages or information we need in order to move on. This is often painful and confronting process that includes grief, exhaustion, or loss. How do we change? Question mark. From learning the past and acting differently.
Okay.
Yeah.
Easy enough.
Oh yeah, that's easy.
That's easy.
How do we change and confront our shadows, you know?
You just do it, I guess.
Yeah, you just make the shift in your brain and it happens.
No, as you were saying, my boss earlier, we were on the phone and she was just saying like, oh, it's such a great day, like 4/8/2024. The eclipse is happening at 11/11. All of these numbers in this realm have a lot of significant meaning and power in a positive way. It's like a day for change. Like good shit's happening. Like stuff is happening, but it's going to be good. That's how she was describing it, which I guess, I mean, it's all open to interpretation.
Yes. And that, like, although it says like confronting your shadows is supposed to be painful, like in the end, it's supposed to be a good thing because you look at your shadows, you accept them or however you work through them, and then you're new again.
Yeah. Okay. So this idea of Saturn return, can we go there?
Yeah.
Because last week I mentioned that one of my coworkers was like, oh yeah, because I told her I was feeling kind of off. And she was like, oh, well, duh. It's like you're in your Saturn return and Mercury's about to get into retrograde. And then we've got the eclipse and like all of this stuff that I honestly just don't pay attention to. Mm-hmm. But maybe I should. Because maybe there's some significance to it.
It's like sometimes like, has anyone ever done this? I'm sure you have. Like if you're just having like an off day and you can't figure out what it is. And so you're like, I just need to look up like, how are Libras today? You know, like randomly you just like want to look that shit up. So I do. And it like, helps you feel better in some way. Yeah. Because you're like, okay, I'm like connected to the greatness of the universe or whatever it is. And like other people who are Libras maybe are experiencing this exact thing. So like I feel less alone.
Yeah.
Or sometimes you just need someone to like tell you like, I just need someone to tell me something, you know? I'm just like, I don't want to have to think about this right now on my own and come up with a conclusion. Like, can someone just be like, you might be feeling this today? And I'm like, I am. Thank you. Thanks. New York Times for giving me that knowledge that I needed. And then 8 times out of 10, I read it and I'm like, no, that's not how I feel today. So
moving on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Can we, because I didn't really even know what Saturn return was until I hit Google. So do you have a like solid explanation for it or a description of it based off what you researched?
All right. So I have like a lot of notes and like Tess and I were laughing about this, and a phrase that I liked that I saw that it like encompasses it is a cosmic coming of age. Did you look at the same article that said that? Because I made sure not to pick the first one that came up on Google. I was like, let's like look at the first like 4 or 5.
Astrological coming of age.
Oh,
I like cosmic better.
Yeah, cosmic sounds like less like fake.
Yes,
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. Okay, great.
But wait, a way of wording it that I saw that I really liked.
Yeah.
We would get in big trouble if we were doing any sort of presentation because we're not really citing our sources that well and we're just copying and pasting.
Yeah, that's really true. I actually think about that every time we research for an episode because like we were communication majors and I think like if you're just in college in general, like you have to cite all your sources.
Yeah.
And I never do for this.
Yeah.
Stuff.
And like plagiarism is a thing. And I'm not trying to plagiarize. I'm just.
No, we're not coming up with these ideas ourselves. We looked these up.
Everyone's like, we get it, guys. You're not.
We don't
just
care.
Tell us what the fuck is a Saturn return.
Stop joking so much.
Okay. They called it the making of the pearl, which this is something I recently learned about how pearls are made.
Under pressure? Or is that diamonds?
No, that's diamonds.
Okay.
Pearls
Same
are because,
thing.
give or take. Pearls are because a grain of sand gets in.
Oh, okay, right.
And then it causes so much irritation that it makes a pearl.
Like from the sand?
Around the grain of sand to like get it out of the body.
I did not
I think
know.
of it kind of like scar tissue if it was a human. Now I could be wrong on that, but we talked about it this weekend because I was up in Big Sur and I heard about it last week about, it's like the making of the pearl. Okay. So then when I thought about Saturn return in that way, I went, it makes sense. Like not everything, like sometimes the most beautiful things that happen in your life are because you've gone through some not so great things, or some
Yes.
things that cause you some irritation or agitation.
Yes, a lot of the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Like that's when we look at people who we think are very wise and have a lot to give to the world. It's because those people have been through some shit.
Yes. Oh my gosh. You know what that reminds me of when you said wisdom is I wrote this down in my notes the other day after I was reading, because I saw this in the book, is that it says, like, when we're aging, it's not that we are withered, we're wizened. I was like, dude, that fucking hits, doesn't it?
That's the women who run with the wolves.
Yeah. I was like, oh my God, that's just such good shit.
Every woman should probably read this book, huh?
No, 1,000%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know. I'll order it today.
Yeah, it's fucking good.
Okay, so the Saturn return. What even is it? We haven't even gone there yet.
No, it typically happens at the age, I read a bunch of different things. It says like 27 to 29 at the age of 29. It's typically like 2.5 year span. We go through typically we go through 3 phases of that in our lives. I think it's like at 29, in your 50s, and when you're in your 80s.
Okay.
And it's basically like a period of deep transformation and like entering the next stage of your life.
Yeah, that's essentially what I saw too. I mean, obviously they have a lot of other ways of describing it, but that's the most like boiled down version.
Yes.
That I think you can
Yes,
get.
that's like the very rudimentary.
That's Cliff Notes right
yes,
there.
correct. Which is like all we're trying to do, because I don't really think I want to go like so deep into the inner workings of it, just because I'm like so ill-informed.
Yeah. Every time my hair gets caught on the microphone cover, I'm like, why? Get away. Too much hair. Yeah. And it was just saying like that it's a very confronting time because it can often bring up feelings of loss or feeling a little bit out of place. Like you don't quite fit in with what you used to be or used to want, but you haven't quite gotten to where you necessarily want to be. So then it's this time of kind of turmoil where you're trying to figure out, like, you almost can feel stuck in a way. Like, why is this happening? Why can't I just like move to the next?
Yeah.
And that's always a really common sign from what I was seeing. Like, that's pretty standard feeling that is a sign of it.
Okay. Got it. Yeah. And I also think, did you say this? I don't know if you did, but for like me personally, I feel like this time, so there's a lot of things I could say. As Tess and I were talking about this earlier off mic, is that typically at this age, like in your late 20s, you're going through transformation already. So it's like this age is indicative of transformation, and it could not even be connected to our Saturn return.
Right. Like, let's think about this, guys. So at the age of 20, like your late 20s, right? Early 30s, you have shed a lot of your previous identities, right? You're no longer in school for the most part. You have likely been in a career at this point, and maybe you've been in it for a few years, and now you're assessing if this is right.
Yeah, you're not relying on your parents as much. You're paying your own way or financially supporting yourself.
Your friends that you have been attached at the hip with for life have now gone and done their thing, which means you're not always together. Could be at a different phase of life than your friends are, or you could feel like you're behind the ball. Like I just feel like in our society, this age has a lot of shifts already.
Yes.
So then it's hard to figure out, okay, is this a Saturn return thing? Like, is this because of the cosmos, or is this just a society thing? And then Madison, you brought up something that's very valid. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, we were laughing because I was thinking that like maybe originally like the cosmos have defined this like coming of age, but as humans, this is hard to explain, but like as humans, we started to also live that way. But knowing humanity, I was telling Tess, is that like we took that idea for ourselves. Like we stole it from like astrology or just like the making of the stars and took it on as our like, okay, in your 30s, we're going to buy a house, we're going to have a car, we're going to have this identity transformation, and it's going to happen again in our 50s and our 80s. Like we came up with this idea ourselves, and that's it. Like nothing from the greater expansive universe. That has nothing to do with us.
But then I started thinking, like, as you were just talking right now, life now looks very different from how life looked 100 years ago. Right? So
we were way more connected, I would argue. Like,
But
earlier.
I'm even talking, yes, but I'm talking even our lifespan maybe wasn't as long, or there, like, I just feel like there was things that were so different about that time. Like, I wonder if any of this was affecting these specific pockets in time. You know what I'm saying? Like in your 30s.
Right, because like
200
like you're
years
saying, like the
ago.
mortality rate was like maybe like 50. Like we didn't live until we were like 90.
Right.
Yes,
So then
got
are
it.
these Saturn returns happening in your 30s? I'm just saying, okay.
Dude, that
all
happened
of-
when you were like 10.
You're like
10
I
and
gotta
20
get a
and
job.
40. Yeah. I need to give birth soon and I need to get married. Probably in a different order, but yes.
Yeah. Anyways, okay.
Who the
All of
fuck
that
knows?
aside, let's just talk about modern day, modern society,
Okay.
us as humans.
Yeah. I like
Who
how you
drive
like went
cars.
off on that tangent. Like
And then scrap it. It's done.
like you're like you fucking go back in time and you're like, okay, wait a minute, let's just talk about modern day.
Well, I was just trying to offer. Why are we so giggly today?
I
I'm
don't
just trying to
know.
offer us like a different.
It's the solar eclipse, dude.
Madison has the most contagious laugh of all time.
That's
Even
literally
Philip
such
says
a
it.
compliment. Like to hear that Phil thought that, I was like, this is the best compliment I've ever
Because
received.
okay, let me go back. Sorry, we are derailed.
Yeah,
I
damn.
have so much coming out of my eyes right now. Last week we were watching funny videos, Philip and I, and then we were going over to see Madison at the house that she was house sitting, and he didn't want to send it to her because he wanted to wait to show her in person because he wanted to hear her laugh, which I thought is
Dude,
so
that's
sweet.
literally the cutest thing
Yeah.
I've ever heard in my life.
Okay. Saturn return. Let's reel this shit in.
Okay.
So I looked up, like, how do you know if you're in your Saturn return, right? And there's obviously some tips, but I feel like the tips of, or like the symptoms, if you will, that is stuff that can happen if you're just like in a rut, right?
So true.
But that is also, that's like what this can be. This is what this can feel like, is kind of like you're in a rut, or like things are shifting and you're not quite out of it yet. So, but I looked up, like, how do you like actually know, like, is there, because they say it's related to your birth chart.
Yes.
I looked it up. We're both in ours right
Yeah.
now. And you can look it up online too, like a Saturn return calculator. You enter your time of birth, the date, obviously, and then where you were born. And it was like, yes, you're in it.
Yeah,
like,
ours started
yeah.
March of 2023.
Yes, March of 2023. And ours is going through May, the end of May of 2025. So an entire year from now, which I don't know. When I scale back and I look at just you and I and our life, I'm like, well, doesn't this make sense?
It fully makes sense. And then I could also argue that it's just like this time in our life. But I don't even want to like argue against it, but I'm just seeing like two sides of the coin of like, since we are getting in our late 20s, we're really having to define like what it is we really want and like who we want to be and where we want to live. Like we made like this transition to move somewhere else and like surround ourselves with a bunch of different people. And so that's just like is the way of life, but also applicable to Saturn return.
Applicable.
Of course.
Right.
Yeah. And you can apply it wherever you want it, honestly. Yeah.
But they say, like, okay, so I have to go into my notes because otherwise I will just get completely derailed and we will not talk about Saturn.
1,000%.
Okay. So yeah, it says that it confronts us with the uncomfortable truth, stripping away all fallacies and anything that is inauthentic or out of alignment. It can feel raw and heavy, but it allows you to get to the core of what you really want. So I try not to spin it into this like, oh, it's like this doom period, right?
Yes.
Where shit's hard and you're in a rut. Like, it doesn't have to be that way. And a lot of what I was reading too was trying to view it from the positive perspective of, like I said, it's the making of the pearl. It's the wisdom churning up. Like, this is how we get to really who we are. And I feel like I loved my 20s. I am so grateful for what I got to experience. But
yeah, that's the past. Thank you. And now we're forging anew.
yes, and
Yeah.
I feel like I'm looking forward to, because they say like, oh, when you emerge out of a Saturn return, you're going to have this new sense of identity and self-awareness. And I've been told a lot that comes with being in your 30s. Like once you kind of hit that corner, you're like, okay, here I am.
Yes.
And I think there's been a lot of times in the past year where I've gone, oh, okay, yes, I'm an adult now. Like you
Mm-hmm.
get glimpses of it when you're in your 20s and you're like, oh, but like it's not so bad. And you
Yeah,
get
we
like,
have
you
time.
piece it out.
We're in our 20s.
This is
Yeah.
easy.
Yeah.
What was everyone stressed about? I mean, I
Yeah.
don't like paying my taxes when they're that high, but
Yeah.
like I can do it.
Totally.
But then when you get to this age, you really start to go, oh, okay. Like
Mm-hmm.
this is more adulthood. Like the
Yeah.
decisions we're making, the moves that we're choosing, all of this, adulthood. And
Mm-hmm.
that can be scary, I think, especially if you are having these feelings of like, well, I'm not quite where I want to be, or I don't really feel connected with where I've been. I'm kind of like in this
Like
limbo
in
state.
between. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It is interesting because I feel like there's a lot to this. There are like the external forces of like being an adult and becoming one and like paying your taxes and paying your bills and having to have your rent covered and your car having to change their brakes. Like,
Yeah.
I say there as my car is like a thing, having to change their brakes.
They have good pronouns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's that. And then it's also like the internal work too, which I definitely focus on. And I think like that's a big part of this too, is like that darkness. But there's like all these cliches of like you need to go into the darkness, go through it in order to see the light again, which obviously I think that's true. And I wrote it down a lot from like, so a lot of the articles will say like this is you coming into like your adulting. It's like your adulting era, whatever. I'm like, yeah, that's okay. Like is like digestible for many people. But then I looked at it at like the spiritual side too, and I was thinking about like confronting your darkness and like kind of letting what needs to die off.
Mm-hmm.
And what needs to live. So it's like there's that duality of like killing things off and then letting things live. And then I also thought about like, well, if I am going into this darkness, which like a lot of times I do, like I don't want to be afraid of it, and I want to come out and be like, I can see in the dark, you know? So yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot of it. Dude, what is up?
Fuck.
Yeah.
Madison.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, that's kind of, I think what they were touching on here too is it's confronting because anything that is inauthentic or is not meant for you is going to fall off.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an exciting thing, right? We think about like, oh, we get to shed some of that extra weight that we've been carrying,
Yes.
right? Like what has been your identity in your 20s? Or if you're in your other Saturn return later on in life, like what has been your identity that actually isn't yours anymore?
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe it was at a time, but then what are you ready to get rid of and be like, you know what? That habit, that belief,
Yes.
that restriction that I've placed on myself, like that's done.
Yeah. And I was thinking, and I was like, Tess would love this. It's like having a call to action in our episodes. Like I think we always want a call to action. And I was thinking the first step to like confronting all of that and like entering the next stage of your life during the Saturn return is like asking yourself the questions that need to be answered, like in order for you to like move into the next stage. So then I think a lot of this period is like me asking myself the hard questions and then feeling out the answers. And then once you know the answers, and it's like, all right, well, it's clear. And now I can move on.
The answer could be nose to nose with you. It could be crystal clear
Mm-hmm.
on what you think, what you feel, and what you know you should do.
Right.
Doesn't change the fact that you still have to do it.
No, of course not. And that's again like bringing it back to seeing that darkness of whatever the answers are or there's questions and just thinking, I'm not afraid, I can do this. Like, let's go. Get your night vision goggles on. Let's go through the muck and get this shit worked out.
You can tell that Madison has lived with me for a bit and has given me some really good life talks because she knows I'm a visual learner. So she's now using these
Yeah, do you
analogies.
like clearing out the muck?
Yeah,
Dude,
I'm like,
I know. Night
when
vision
you
goggles.
said night vision goggles, I suited up. I was ready
Mm-hmm.
to go.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so then I do have a question like for us is like what does our Saturn return or like this transition into our next stage, like what does it mean to us?
Okay, great question. The first thing I think about is actually not the classic like adult things where it's, are you going to buy a house or are you not? Or what job are you going to have? Are you going to pay your bill?
Yes.
Like it's not that stuff. It's, I, in my 20s, had a hard time emotionally maturing, I think. That's how I would describe it.
Interesting.
Like,
Okay.
I feel like I knew answers to things and I stayed, or
Mm.
I didn't make the changes that I needed to make. I shied away from them to please other people, to try to keep myself soothed, whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now that I'm in this Saturn return, I feel like the Band-Aid got ripped, you guys. Like, I have been through the ringer with some of this stuff, and I'm grateful for it because it propelled me into a path that was, like, I think way better suited for me.
Mm-hmm.
Not just in terms of me being with Philip and being the happiest I've ever been, but like who I surround myself with and where I live and all that stuff. Like, this is feeling great.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, the Saturn return is like feeling confident in my ability to choose, which goes back to my word of the
Yeah.
year of feeling confident in what I choose and that that's what's meant for me.
Yes. I love that. It's all
Because all of
great.
these decisions that come with being an adult and like having to advocate for yourself and create your own life, like that's a stressful thing for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's even more stressful if you can't trust your decisions or you're not confident enough to make them and you let other people make your decisions for you.
Yes.
That's out. But that was kind of my story, like not fully, right? But if I can like boil down to the theme of how I was in a lot of the scenarios,
Mm-hmm.
I was like giving up my power
Right.
and letting
I was
people
gonna
choose
say,
for
yeah.
me.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
that's
so
so interesting.
for me, that Saturn return is like, okay, reins back in
Mm-hmm.
my hands. What are the decisions I'm making? How am I thinking? How am I feeling? What are my moves? Who am I with? Like, let's go.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like, at least.
Yeah, hell yeah. That's fucking awesome. And it does make sense. Like, I'm on that same level in a sense. Not like with the decision. I don't have like your similar path, but like I'm on the level of like regaining my power, or I guess like stepping into it in a sense, because like we know it's within us, but we just have patterns like maybe in our early 20s that like stifle that like big presence. And since we surround ourselves like with each other all the time, I think that it makes sense that we have like a very similar vision in life. And for me, I would say like this phase in life, Saturn return, or just like our coming of age or going into our 30s, like this year, is it, like I was saying, is causing me to ask myself like the hard questions that like I probably know the answer to, and like I want to lean into those. Like, why? I also just like really want to get to know myself on like a really deep level of like understanding my patterns and my behaviors and why I live this way, and like, are they efficient to like the person that I want to be? And if they're not, we need to scrap them and let's work on something else. Like, I really want to know myself like on the deepest level possible, so that when I move through life, I am confident like in myself and my decisions. And it's like even like a bigger word than confidence, you know, like confidence,
Yeah.
I feel like doesn't even cover it. It's like,
Trust, knowing.
yeah, like a
Or
deep
is there
inner
not quite
knowing.
a
Yeah, it's
word
like
for it?
something, it's like derived from like the soul in a way. It's like so deep that like I can't even put like a human or like an English term to it. So ask myself the hard questions, like establishing like what my wounds are like as a person, and why I keep going through like similar cycles in my life. Like, you know how like things keep happening, you're just like, why is this happening again? Like, did I obviously didn't confront it well enough and have like an action plan that was going to help me move past that. So like, let's look at this again. Like, what can I do differently? And yeah, I think like, yeah, there's just like a lot.
So when you say like, okay, I'm gonna like I ask myself the hard questions.
Yeah.
Obviously that looks different for everybody, but can you give some maybe non-specific
Well,
questions that someone could ask themselves?
so I think it like starts with me just defining and redefining like who I am and who I want to be. So I guess you could ask yourself like a broader question of like, well, who do I want to be? Like, how do I want to express myself in this world moving forward? And like, that's obviously like ever changing. So I think I ask myself that a lot. And how do I, which has been like a common theme, like in the last few episodes, is like, my inner world being really expansive and like me expressing that outwardly. Like, what does that look like? And maybe I can have a million answers for that, but let's just like try it out. And let's just try some of those answers out and see if that feels good to you.
Okay.
And like, I want to know, like, get really, which I do know my values in life, but I just want to like refine them even more so that like I'm attracting exactly what I want in my life.
Okay.
So those are just some.
Right. I think of others being like, am I aligned with where I am and who I'm with?
Mm-hmm.
Am I contributing to these scenarios in a positive way, or am I hurting myself by not looking at this deeper? Like, am I avoiding certain things?
Yeah.
What am I avoiding? Like, I obviously, that's why I said like non-specific, but because everyone is so individual and what questions they need to ask themselves.
Yeah, that's true.
But thanks.
Yeah.
I think that's helpful.
Okay, good. I was like, oh my God. You know, when you like just like talk a lot and you're like,
What did I
what
say?
do I even? Yeah, exactly. That's how I feel. I'm like, oh my God. Oh, also, this is like a more specific question that I had, which I just like wrote this down in my notes the other day, is like when something feels uncomfortable to you, and that could be like many things. It could be like super small, of like, oh my God, this shirt feels like so tight, or like it could be anything like that, or like being with this person, I don't know, it doesn't feel like really great to be in their presence. Like, why? I want to know why. And if I can come up with some answers, I want to like lean into that and try to define it more for myself. Like, oh, I don't like being with this person because it feels like they're seeking information from me that's maybe negative and it puts me in a weird headspace. Like, okay, why? And then like dive into it even deeper. Like, I don't know why that stuff like really fascinates me. And typically, I think people would look at that and be like, oh my God, she's really an overthinker, like negative, ew, ew, ew. But I'm like, am I? Like, why is that viewed as being a negative aspect of like overthinking?
Yeah. Why is overthinking? Like, why is that over? Why even is that categorized
Yeah,
as
and then
overthinking?
I could even go as far to say is like women are like, we're defined as being overthinkers, and that's like a negative aspect. I'm like, who says that? Like, they're putting that on us, like on women in general, and saying like that is a negative quality. Don't do that. I'm like, but what if it actually, I can access my power through overthinking, and you're trying to strangle that? What if? I'm just saying.
Just throwing it out there.
Just throwing it out there. Some weird shit. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I have like a lot of interesting notes that dive deep into stuff that is like not of this world, I feel sometimes. So
Well, we're around to hear it, aren't we, everybody?
Yeah,
we would love to
maybe.
know what's in. I would love to know what is in that journal.
Yeah.
I would
It
take.
comes out sometimes, and I'm just like,
Well, there it is.
Yeah. Yeah. I just think like again, with like this transitionary period or like this deep transformation, like I want to reaffirm to myself that like I am the key to everything that I want, and I don't want to be like seeking it from outside things. Like, yes, outside things and relationships and like a bunch of stuff can make you more fulfilled, and I want all those things, but like at the end of the day, like it is just me, and like I want to be my own magic for myself.
I think of it as like, I view you as the individual, or us all as the individual, right? And what you're saying is like, when you take all of that away, here I am.
Yeah.
And the way I think of it as everywhere I go and everyone I'm with, here I am. So like in the way that you're describing it, I picture it as like you're the Lone Ranger and you need to make sure that you're happy with yourself. And I picture it as everywhere I go and everyone I'm with, I'm there. Am I happy with who that person is?
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to like say that I am like some singular event and that I'm not like affecting other people. Like, I am still amongst the world, and like I am with my people, and I don't know. I feel like the way that you just like said it is coming off as like my way's negative.
No, like I'm thinking of it as like like obviously I picture things, right? And it's like
Yes.
I picture the way that you said it. We view ourselves sometimes as like, I need to make sure that I'm self-sufficient and happy as my person, right? Because
Yeah.
that is awesome to have external happiness and validation and love relationships and love outside things, but I need to make sure that I'm happy first, because if any one of those gets stripped away,
Yes.
I want to come back to myself. And then another way of thinking about it too is like, if everywhere I go, I'm there, and everyone that I interact with, I'm there, I need to make sure that I'm happy, because then everything else will feel that too. And not just I want to make others happy, but like the way I think of it as, I had a friend who right out of high school up and left and traveled by herself because she was searching for something bigger, right? And it was like, but you are everywhere you go.
Yeah.
And that's something we've all heard. And I saw it play out too, where it was like, she came back unfulfilled because she went there looking for something either inside or outside of herself and didn't quite find it. And so I'm not saying my way of thinking about it is in contrast to yours, is like, this is how I think of it and this is how you think of it. I was just picturing another way to think about it, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah.
Like, all things stripped back, you need to be happy with yourself, because you never know what's going to get taken away from you, and you never know what's going to be added.
Yeah.
So you need to make sure that you are solid within yourself, because that's the root. Yes. Another way of thinking of it as, everywhere you go, you are there. And you need to make sure that you're happy with yourself and you're confident, and those are words we've been throwing around a lot this episode. But as you said, there's a deeper word that we just can't touch yet.
Yes.
You need to make sure that that's present within yourself, because nothing's going to feel right.
Right.
If you're not, right? You could be in the most loving household, but if you're miserable inside because things aren't right, then it's not going to feel great.
Yes.
Am I doing an okay job at describing this?
Um,
Did I set you off?
No, it didn't set me off, but I feel like it's almost the same thing in a way. But I think like in your head it is separate, but you did like a good job of explaining it. I think maybe when I listen back to the episode, like I'll be able to catch your different meaning of what it is.
But maybe it came out differently than how I'm picturing it.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yes, maybe, which is okay.
That happens
of
a
course.
lot.
Yeah. I mean, that happens to me too. But I'm thinking like, I don't know why I have like this deep urge to like be very self-sufficient, and not even I don't know if self-sufficient is even the right word, but just like being like deeply happy with myself. And then like, I think with that, and like you holding the key to your happiness, like everything else can fall into place. And like, I just want to be like this beaming light. Like if I'm thinking of like all these figures in the world, like as I'm walking down the street, like I want to be a beaming light of energy, like for everyone. So it's like, I have like this key that I found like for myself, but it helps me and everyone around me.
Yeah. I think you already are that though.
That's nice. Thank you.
I mean, there's people that I meet that have just recently met you, and then they're like, oh yeah, Madison, like,
oh, that's so nice.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, not that I think that I'm not that, but I think that it could be like, I could be brighter.
I think we all could, right?
Yeah.
We all just kind of get trapped underneath our own shit.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes, dude, like I told you about, there was like this thing the other day where I went into FedEx and I told you this story. And like, sometimes you're just like not nice to people. Like you're just in a weird funk. And I'm like, damn, I walked out and I was like, I was like not my best. That was kind of sad. Like all those people in there, that man that was talking with me at the cash, like, he just didn't get that right version of me. Like it was sad. It was a bad version.
It happens.
Not my best. Yeah. Holy shit.
It's sad when it's to strangers because they've done nothing most of the time to warrant it.
Yeah. But it felt like he did something, you know. I was just like, I feel attacked right now. So I'm going to be like, my animal instincts are kicking in, and it's just
that's
stiff
a no.
arm. Yeah.
Okay. Going back to the Saturn return.
Oh yeah, is that what we were talking about?
I guess so. Fuck. When you said we could really talk, isn't that some crazy shit?
Yeah,
yes, it is.
We
tangents.
could quote that on our website.
They say like, okay, so some of the tips to know with a Saturn return is that Saturn, I just feel so woo talking like this, but it's okay.
Yeah.
Saturn doesn't like shortcuts.
Okay.
Like there is no quick fix for stuff
Okay.
like this. So you have to trust it and ride it out, whatever that means for you. Whether that's sitting with yourself more, having deeper conversations with people, putting things into action, all of the above. There is like the only way out is through.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't skip off this one.
For sure.
Yeah. And which is a good thing because this is where you are going to grow maybe the most.
Yeah. And even like bringing it back to like asking yourself the hard questions. And when you find out those answers and like you walk into those dark spaces, you can't go back. Like, you know, the answer, pushing it away is just going to prolong the experience. So you might as well just deal with it now. Yeah.
Yeah. You've taught me a lot of that though. Like rip the Band-Aid. Like you've already started to peel it. Go.
Yeah.
What? Can't seal it back down.
Dude, if anything, like the monster grows bigger and you're just like, oh my God, I made this worse on myself.
Yeah. Yeah. I could go so deep into that.
I know.
Okay. You reap what you sow, right? We all know that. We've heard that 1,000 times, but I didn't love seeing this, but that's probably because there's elements in all of us where we feel like, oh fuck, could have done better. But it says, if you haven't been pushing for yourself for the past 30 years, because that's essentially when this happens, it's going to be rough. But if you have, the Saturn return will feel like a level up. Okay. Which I think it can be both, right? I think it could be a rough bump to the next level, but you'll get there. But reaping what you sow in the sense of like, that's why it's important that you put in the work and you create the life that you want and you stop, you know, following what others are doing or following what you think you should do. It's like, what does you, the individual, want for yourself?
Yeah, which is actually like so freeing and really, really cool.
Yeah. And then the last one was coming back to like trusting it. So obviously trust the process. What is meant for you will be, and what you don't need or doesn't serve you will fall aside. So just understanding that like, whoa, here comes the big wave and lots of shit's going to come up with it. Like feelings, thoughts, you're going to feel pretty uncomfortable. Yeah. That's just change in general, but know that like you can trust it, go deeper, hang on, and you're going to get through that phase. But I just think of it of like, they say that it's a specific timeline, right? Like a Saturn return is from this date to this date. But obviously, like, there's some fall off. It's not like, oh, that date comes and, like, the day before, whatever.
September 25th, 2025. That's when it's going to be over. Thank
Done.
God.
Yeah. I think that there's, like, some fallout, if you will.
Oh,
or
1,000%.
Cleanup work.
And I think, like, the Saturn return in my head, anyway, like, started well before March 2023. Like, it might have been, like, a year before that. I don't know. Or I guess like the feeling of what Saturn return represents.
Yeah, mine started in like 2019, I think.
Yeah, dude, I know, me too.
Like if we can think back to 2019.
Yeah, totally.
Woo! Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I also think like I was thinking about like, oh, what does Saturn return mean like for me? And for some reason, like I have always read, like whether it be in like novels or like on some blog or something, that like women are kept like to be like small. And I think like you've experienced things like that where like maybe you've been too loud or too bossy or something. And so I've heard examples of that and I'm like, oh, I don't know like if I've ever experienced that, but I think yes, I have. And I'm realizing that. And it's not like any pressure that I could say like one person has put on me, but I think like I have kept myself in a lot of cages, and now I'm like, no, that doesn't work for me anymore. Like no longer am I going to make myself small? Like I want to be as expansive as possible and not be afraid of like how other people perceive that shift. Because who wants to be in my life, regardless if I change in that way, like they'll stay, and who doesn't will leave, and that's fine.
When you said that, like you're trying to think maybe of ways or of times where you feel like you've been encouraged to stay small. I feel like you can tie it back to the overthinking thing, because while you are not classically a bossy person, you allow people to do their thing, you just stay out of it. I think that sometimes if you are someone who thinks deeply about something and you can communicate that, that's going to make people feel uncomfortable, and they don't want that.
Yeah.
Right. So then they're going to
sure.
push you aside because
Yeah.
they're like, stop thinking that way, Madison. You're overthinking it.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to be diving into it that hard. You're making problems where there's not. All of that type of behavior is encouraging you to stay small
Right.
and stay out of the depth.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I can think of you being kept small.
That's honestly so helpful, because I was just like having this moment when you were saying that, because I was like, I am typically more quiet, or like I'm observe people, and so like I'm able to like put things together in my mind and then like outwardly say it. So like you just said it for me, like you did that for me.
Ah, nice.
So I like it.
Great.
That was good.
I'm trying to learn.
Yeah. That's helpful.
Yeah, because I think you often go, well, I'm a pretty mellow, quiet person.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's no way like anybody wants to keep me smaller than I am. But like, that's just, sometimes there's ways that you don't even maybe realize
Yeah, it's true. I mean,
that you're bigger, right?
yes.
Like I've got a loud voice. I've got a bigger personality,
Yeah.
but you know the bruise and you can push on it because you've observed it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's true. I know. Like you could even think there's just like a lot of things I could say, but just if I observe like my childhood of like why I felt like I was kept small, and then you reinforce that as an adult, and now I'm not going to do that anymore. Like obviously it's not just going to like change tomorrow. It's been changing for the last few years, like although pretty slowly but steadily at least. But yeah, I just like am able to recognize how I have kept myself small and other people have too. And I'm just like, okay, wait a minute. That just doesn't feel good anymore. So we're just gonna throw that away.
Yeah, and then you start to realize like it is up to me, the individual, to make the change. Like no one's gonna like they might invite me to have a seat at the table, but I have to make it.
Yeah, and
like,
I think
I'm the only one who can show up and do these things.
Yes, and I think it really excites me to like show this new version of myself to people who have known like the older version, because I'm just like I kind of just want to see like how that shit plays out. But sometimes you're right. People don't like to, I don't know, people don't like a lot of times when you speak your truth outwardly, I feel. Like I notice that like even if I say things to family members and they're just like, whoa, where did that come from? I'm like, this is how I've always been, but now I'm saying it out loud. So yeah, just is what it is, you know?
I've thought this for many years.
Yeah.
This is the first you're hearing of it.
Yeah. And then I just think like, if I'm lucky to live to like the age of like 50 and beyond, like imagine us then, like this little piece of power that we feel now, like it is going to be huge when we're in our late like 50s and beyond. Like I'll just be unstoppable.
Fingers crossed we make it that far.
Yeah, I plan on it. Yeah.
So I don't know how much of Saturn Return we talked about, other than like we scratched it, right?
Yeah, I feel like
let's recap. We
fuck,
not the whole
okay.
episode, but I'm just thinking like we talked about. I just like have to solidify like, okay, yes, we did that, right?
Okay,
like this is an episode about Saturn Return.
Yeah, I mean it's an episode about
life and us.
Yeah, about life, and Saturn Return was just like is precipice the right word? It's like it was just kind of like this is a symbolic fucking example, but it's like a doorway that we just walked through. Like it just like poached the conversation, and then we were able to run with it however we wanted.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
I feel at ease now.
Okay.
Great. We don't
Good.
have to recap.
Okay, great. Because I was like, I don't know if I can recap. Like there was a lot of like weird little avenues we went down.
Yeah. But I'm intrigued to learn more about astrology or this whole realm, because I feel like there's stuff there that can help inform further introspection of like
further exploration.
Yes,
for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we'll see where it goes. We could be gurus in no time.
I know. I always think, gee, you are you. That's right. Bring it back. I always think about like paying someone to like do my chart.
Yeah.
And just tell me. Yeah. But then like I'd really have to find someone I trust, because there's a lot of people.
I think you'd have to go to multiple.
Yeah.
To see if, what's the overlap here.
Yeah.
Is there a consensus?
That's right. We go to multiple, there's like different answers. I would be sad.
I
I would not
okay.
believe in it if that
No,
happened.
I know. I'm like, this is over for me.
Yeah, this is
I
fake.
am always intrigued to go to a psychic to know to see what they predict for the future.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of, one of my best friends, you know this, went to a psychic and she said she brought me up a few different times and said some really crazy things. And I was grateful. She talked about like how important I am in her life.
Yes.
Which obviously I love to hear that. But then said something about my life that is upcoming,
Mm-hmm.
where my best friend just told me this like not that long ago. And I was like, dude. And she's like, I didn't even think anything of it when she said it. Cause I was like, what? No. And I like brushed it off. Like, no, she's wrong on that.
Yeah.
But then you just told me this and I'm thinking, oh my God, she was right. Pretty cool. So that's when I start to think maybe there's something there. But I would also want to see a past life regressionist. Wouldn't that be cool?
I would definitely love that because I always talk with Tess about like generational trauma and things like that. And like, I wonder if we carry like what our great, 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 great grandmother carried, like still because they didn't confront it like within their lives. So I would love to know that because I think like sometimes I even deal with things that my mom may not look at in her life that like we take on as like kids, like behaviors or like beliefs that we learn from them.
Well, of course, because how can you not? They imprint
Right.
so heavily on you.
Yeah. So then I'm like, okay, if I see things, I'm like, I don't want that to pass on to my kids. Then let's do this. Let's deal with this now.
What's that book? It Ends With Us or something. There's a
I
book
don't
out
know.
there that's about generational trauma and beliefs.
It makes sense. I'm sure there is.
Yeah.
I should read it.
Yeah. All right. Well, I feel good. How do you feel?
Yeah, me too.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I feel great.
Good.
Yeah, I mean,
love
it's
you. I've
always good
missed
to talk
you.
about it.
We
I
were
know.
away from each other for like 4 days.
Yeah,
plus
that's a
2
long
weeks.
time. Fuck.
Because you were gone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not right.
We're back in action.
Yeah, we are. It feels right.
All right. Well, thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks for listening. We're going to walk and get some lunch now. And just, I hope everyone has a beautiful rest of your day. We both look at the camera. Bye. Talk
Okay, bye.
soon.